welcome back to another M&S tutoring video. Today we'll be learning how to model a linear equation given different scenarios. So our first scenario is a graph. Well, using a graph, it's really simple to model an equation because everything is really given to you. You don't really have to solve for anything. So before we solve, let's just begin and figure out what we need to model an equation. So to model an equation, we need two different things. We need m and we need b. To find m, we know that we could use the formula of rise over run. And since this is a graph, we can just simply look at it and we can find the y-intercept. So we can just look at the graph. Now, first of all, let's start with slope. Over here we have two different points. We have point A and point B. As you can probably notice, you can tell that both of these points fall perfectly onto the grid, as both of their coordinates are whole numbers. This makes the rise over run process a lot easier, as we get whole numbers instead of a really small fraction or decimal. Now, first of all, let's start to find the rise of the slope. So we can say that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the run. Now if we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, we can say that 4 is the rise. Now that we have the rise and the run, we can find m. We can simply say 4 over 5 is equal to the slope of this equation. So as of right now, our equation is y is equal to 4 over 5x, as m is 4 over 5 plus b, right? Now, instead of actually inferring on the graph itself and saying that b is probably 0.5, we can actually sub in either point A or point B, both the coordinates for x and y. It doesn't really matter which point, but after we sub it in, we can actually solve for b to find the exact value for b. So let's go ahead and sub in point B. So the coordinates for point B are 2 and 2, meaning we have to sub x in for 2, and we also have to sub y in for 2. So let's go ahead and sub both these values in, and we can say that 2 is equal to 4 over 5 times 2 plus b, right? So again, after that we can say that we can begin to solve this equation even further, and we can say that 8 over 5 plus b, so 2 is equal to 8 over 5 plus b, and then we need to make both the constant and the variable have the same denominator, so we can multiply the entire right side by 5, so we can say that 8 over 5 in brackets plus b times 5. So we can multiply both sides by 5. So again, after all of these steps, we can get a final answer of 8 plus 5b divided by 5 is equal to 2. Is equal to 2. So after we solve this, we get 10 minus 8 is equal to 5b, and 2 divided by 5 is equal to b. And of course, let me just pull out my calculator. 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. So we can simply say that 0.4 is equal to b, or is the y-intercept. As you can see before, when I interpolated within the graph and estimated a value for b, if I solved, I got a more accurate and more actually a correct answer rather than just saying 0.5 as it looked on the graph. So since we have b and m, we can write an equation for this line on the graph, and the equation would be y is equal to, again, as m is 4 over 5, so 4 over 5x plus b, and b is 0.4. So this is the equation of the line over here, right here. Right? Now moving on. Say you didn't actually have a nice graph with a perfectly straight line drawn on it with 2 different points, and say you just had a table with all the coordinates that actually lie on the graph. Well, you can actually still solve and find the equation using a table. So what a table, a linear table actually does, it basically just gives you the coordinates, the different x and y values for coordinates on the line itself. So instead of an actual line, it just gives you the coordinates. Well, basically all you need to find the equation of a straight line is 2 points. So you can say with any 2 points, you can make the equation. But over here we have an entire table. So what we're going to do is first we're going to make sure that a linear equation is actually possible with these. So what we're going to do is we're going to find first differences. So first difference is basically the difference between all the x values and all the y values. And if all the first differences, so the difference between these two, the difference between these two, these two, and the same for x, if they're all the same, then we know that this equation is linear. So 11 minus 3, 8, of course, and 19 minus 11, also 8, 27 minus 19, 8, and 35 minus 27, also 8, and 2 minus 0, 2, 4 minus 2, 2, 2, 2, and so on. So we know that this table is in fact a linear table, so we can go on to solving for a linear equation that models this table, right? So again, we need 2 things. We need m and we need b. And after we have both m and b, we can simply just write the equation. So to find m, remember m is delta y. It's just a fancy way of saying the difference in y, as in the first differences here, over the difference in x. Again, just the first differences in the x column. So we can say m is equal to delta y, which was 8, right, over delta x, which was 2, as the first difference was 8 in the y column, and the first differences were 2 in the x column, right? They're both basically the first differences. So we can say m is equal to 4. Now that we have the slope, we need to find basically the y-intercept. But the y-intercept is not really evident here, is it? Oh wait, it actually is. Since we know that x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 3, we know that the coordinate would look something like this, right? It'd look, since x is 0, it'd be right here, and then 3, so the coordinate would be like right over here. So we already know that the y coordinate is 3, right? Because the x coordinate is 0. A cool thing about the y-intercept is that always the coordinate for the y-intercept of x will always be 0. So in this case, we know that the y-intercept is 3, right? But in other tables, if we didn't know, we could sub any point into this equation over here. So y is equal to 4x plus b. We could sub any 2 points for y and x to solve for b. So let's say I subbed in 2 and 11. So I could say that 11 is equal to 4 times 2 plus b, right? So I could say that 11 is equal to 8 plus b, and 11 minus 8 is equal to b. So 3 is equal to b. And as you can see, both cases we got the same answer. If I subbed in a point, I also got 3 is equal to b. And looking at the table, I also got the y-intercept to be 3. So now that we know that b is 3, we can combine all the things that we just solved for, and we can say y is equal to 4x, as the slope is 4, plus 3, as b is 3. Now moving on to the last way to model an equation is using a word problem. Now a word problem is not really the easiest way to model an equation, but it's fairly simple after you get used to it. So this word problem reads, Bob the plumber charges $15 per hour plus a service fee of $40 for coming out to your house. Which function models the situation? So right now I want you to ignore the word functions and just think of it as a linear equation, right? Because a function is basically a linear equation, but it's just a fancy way of saying, it's just a fancier way of saying a linear equation. So I'm going to begin to start modeling this equation. It says that he charges, so I'm going to outline the most important things. He charges $15, he charges $15 per hour, which is pretty important. So $15 per hour plus a service fee of $40 for coming out to your house. So you could kind of think of this is kind of the slope as it is really determined using an x value. It's not determined on its own. And the service fee is kind of like a y-intercept. It's kind of like a b because it's on its own, right? It's a constant, right? So we can model this as, so let's say the cost, right? Like the total cost. Let's say total cost is equal to what? Well, it's equal to how many hours. So x is how many hours is because we don't know how many. So 15. So instead of x, let's write h for hours. So 15h plus 40, as you're gonna have to pay 40 either way, even though you don't say go for a complete hour or 2 hours. So this, I don't know if you saw it right away or not, but this is basically a linear equation. If the total cost, which is basically y, is equal to 15x plus 40, meaning that this word problem can also be modeled as an equation in the form of y is equal to mx plus b. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you learned something new. I hope you are more clear with how to format equations using the 3 different scenarios I showed you, using a graph, using a table, and using a word problem. If you like the video, please feel free to subscribe and drop a thumbs up.